नमस्कार। भारत तक देख रहे हैं आप। मैं हूं आपके साथ अजीत। इस वक्त श्रीलंका में जो स्थिति बनी हुई है उसको देखते हुए ये जरूरी हो जाता है कि हम ये समझें कि आखिर श्रीलंका में क्या हो रहा है। श्रीलंका में जो स्थिति बनी है उसके पीछे की वजह क्या है, और सबसे बड़ा सवाल ये है कि आखिर श्रीलंका के राष्ट्रपति गोटबाया राजपक्षे कहाँ है। इसी मुद्दे पर बातचीत करने के लिए हमारे साथ इकबाल अथस सर हैं। सर संडे टाइम्स के लीडर हैं, श्रीलंका में ये काम करते हैं, और क्योंकि पॉलिटिकल चीजों पर ये पॉलिटिकल एडिटर हैं तो ये ज्यादा समझते हैं उन चीजों को, तो आज हम इन्हीं से बातचीत करने वाले हैं। सर, वेलकम वेलकम ऑन भारत तक। माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन टू यू इज, वेयर इज गोटबाया राजपक्षे, द प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ श्रीलंका?
At the moment, his whereabouts are officially not known, but it is very clear he is somewhere in Sri Lanka. And I say this because the time it has taken for him to respond to certain developments have been pretty much quick. Like, for example, the Speaker of Parliament, Mahinda Yapa Abewardena, wrote to him last night saying that he should step down. And the reply came barely an hour, within an hour, saying that he would do so by the 13th of July. Similarly, today there was an announcement from his media people to say that he has asked that the distribution of cooking gas, that is LPG, be distributed equitably. He was aware that a shipment of some 3,100 tons, which is barely sufficient to meet the needs of Colombo, was arriving in a ship today. So, contrary to reports that have been circulating that he was in different capitals of the world, he is very much in Sri Lanka.
Okay, so this is the major question that is being asked, Googled, searched, because everybody wants to know where is the president. And can we talk about the latest scenario in Sri Lanka? We have seen people are roaming around the president palace. Can you please brief us about how this all happened?
Well, it's a very, very significant development, I would say, particularly what happened on Saturday, which is the 9th of May, 9th of July, as you would notice. Number one is that despite the deployment of some 10,000 troops and policemen, they even opened fire from certain entry points into the president's house. We realized that at one point they wilted. They wilted and allowed all the protesters to go in to the president's house. And if there were fears that the protesters would vandalize the place, it did not take place. But some of the findings that they came about were very surprising. Like, for example, they saw pile of currency notes, something amounting to 18 million rupees, which of course in rich man's terms is only pocket money. Then there were others who jumped onto his bed and started relaxing. There were yet others who used his swimming pool. One of them went and opened the cupboard of a bookshelf and found that was leading into a bunker, and there was a lift that was taking them into that place. Then another guy played an accordion, not an accordion so much as an electric organ, and people started clapping and dancing in the very place where colonial rulers have drunk tea or had whiskey soda and ginger ale and cognac at one time. So, similarly, they also carried out attacks on the presidential secretariat as well as the temple trees, which is the official residence of the prime minister. Now, significantly, that changes the security scenario in this government. Now, if you will recall, on Friday night around 8 p.m., the security authorities clamped down an indefinite curfew, and that was called a police curfew, and there was a howl of protests over it. So on Saturday morning, the government was compelled to call it off. And then we know that large crowds were gathering in Colombo, and the turnout of over 100,000 people in the city, with more and more pouring in, was despite the lack of public transport, train services, and the absence of fuel stocks at various filling stations.
Sir, there's a question being asked by many protesters that behind this economic crisis in Sri Lanka, this family is responsible for what is happening in Sri Lanka.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get that question, please.
Sir, everyone is saying that this family is only responsible for the Sri Lanka economic crisis. Do you agree?
Of course, I do, because there have been unbridled corruption uh, in the past so many years when there have been Rajapaksa rule. And what makes it even more disturbing is the fact that not one of them have been brought to justice. Not one of them have been arrested or produced in courts and charged for stealing public funds. So it was purely a case of commissions in the past. It was a case of even monies from various projects have gone missing. Now we know we had the IMF delegation which is coming to Sri Lanka for a bailout program. And while they were present here, it came to light that some of the files relating to various development projects have gone missing. Those files gave the details about the volume of funding that have come from the developed countries and how they were siphoned off if they are only in those files, and therefore the authorities have not been able to identify who took what. So that had become the order of the day. And ironically, even after the protests began some 80 or 85 days ago, this had been going on with various politicians trying to seize the opportunity to make commissions on fuel imports, the import of cooking gas, and related essential items.
Sir, do you think that when elections will be conducted, this family will step down?
I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. Their theme song all along has been that we are not rogues, we have not taken the money. And interesting enough, yesterday after they captured, not yesterday I'm sorry, it was yesterday when they walked into the president's house, there was a mock cabinet meeting in place with one or two of the participants posing off as the Rajapaksas and trying to defend themselves by saying that we never took the money, we never robbed. So the fact that they have taken the money has become public knowledge, so much so that all the protesters are demanding that until justice is meted out, which means that they are made accountable for the money that they have taken, our campaign will not stop.
Sir, one more question. Don't you think that there is any second alternative after Rajapaksa family? Who will govern Sri Lanka? Who will be the next prime minister? Who will be the next president? Do you see any political party or a leader who can just hold Sri Lanka and put it back?
That is a very, very important question for a number of reasons. The advent of Rajapaksa into the Sri Lankan politics has seen an evil aspects because they never encouraged anybody from outside the family to shine and make their mark in politics. And we haven't seen anybody making a bid at the leadership level because, take for example, Prime Minister Rajapaksa, who has served as the president of this country on at least 2 or 3 occasions, has been grooming his son Namal Rajapaksa, against whom there have been widespread allegations in the recent past. So the result is there is a vacuum there. In fact, if one is to suggest that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is to fill that vacuum, there is a big handicap there. A handicap is in the form of the protesters themselves saying that he has actually come to protect the Rajapaksas, and his inability to win overall support in the parliament itself. So we are seeing a kind of crisis situation there.
Okay, so no one is coming outside from the Rajapaksa family to govern or to rule Sri Lanka.
Well, outside the Rajapaksa family, I think whoever is going to emerge will be a new face, and we don't know how they are going to perform. And as you probably know, now on Friday, the Speaker of Parliament, Mahinda Abewardena, chaired a meeting of all the parties represented in Parliament. And there they took a decision calling upon the President and the Prime Minister both to resign. They also took a decision that he would be the acting president for a period of 1 month. Now, in that interim period, what they expect to do is for the parliament to elect the president for the rest of the current term of the term of the present
Yeah.
incumbent, which is 2 years and 4 months. So at that point of time, we will have to see who will command the majority respect or the support of the House. That is yet seen. But there are various other issues that are emerging now. For example, we see the protesters. They held a meeting at the President's house last Saturday, which is a press conference. Where one of
Okay.
the speakers, I heard him say that they have no confidence in the parliament because the parliament has not been able to find a solution for it. It is they who have come and seen to the exit or the impending exit of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and therefore they would have to have a stake in choosing that course of action. Now that becomes significant for a number of reasons. One is that we now see certain left elements also in the group of protesters. So whether they are propounding the left ideology there, and whether there is a move by the left elements to seize control of the situation is not very clear, but it's going to manifest itself if that is so.
So, do you see any Chinese angle, Chinese intervention, any influence by Chinese government in this whole protest?
Well, quite honestly, I would look at it this way. They did depend on China for a lot of assistance, like, for example, the port in Hambantota, then the Colombo port city, and so on. And to use a word, they went on milking them all along. And then it came to a saturation point where the Chinese, Beijing also began to realize that there were no return. And I'm afraid this kind of syndrome was developing even where India was concerned. Now, I dread to think what the country's situation would have been had it not been for the assistance extended by India. And they became so India focused, and they went on depending on India for more and more assistance. And if you know, in the recent past, the Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman sent some financial experts and the Indian Foreign Minister, the Foreign Secretary, on a visit to Colombo for a few hours. And the idea was to assess whether the government of Sri Lanka had the ability to repay back the loans that they have taken if they were to consider any further assistance. And the other is the people also spoke to the visiting IMF team at that time, because what they want to do is to structure into any IMF deal the repayment facilities also. So therefore the government stands committed when it comes to an issue. So that is pending at the moment.
Sir, but the Indian Foreign Minister has clearly made a statement after this protest. The first reaction came out from Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar, and he said that India will help Sri Lanka because both the countries have very friendly relations, and we are a neighbor country. So it is the duty of a neighbor country to help in this condition.
Well, India, if you go back, if you wind the clock back a little backwards, you realize there was a time when there was a number of promises that were made to India. Now, one is the East Container Terminal in the Colombo port, but they were not delivered. And naturally, there were concerns in the Indian government. So when we got into difficulty as a result of the economic crisis, they went to India. And Delhi's position was, first you fulfill the promises that you gave us. Then consider what you need. That happened. And then
Sir, but this happened only because they are getting more close to China. That is why they are actually not dealing with India. We have seen when Sri Lanka is just being a puppet of China, acting on its fingertips. But right now it is the duty of every neighbor country to help Sri Lanka so that Sri Lanka can get rid of all these problems what now Sri Lanka is facing.
Indeed. But if you see the official statements of the government of India, or for that matter, even the government of Tamil Nadu, where you have such a lot of Tamil-speaking people, even the statements they have issued with regard to sending food supplies and various other items for support, they've all made clear that this is for the people of Sri Lanka.
Exactly.
So they are making a distinction that this is not for government A or government B. But as you say, this is one of the areas where the Chinese foreign policy has failed. They have just dumped money. And if they expected Sri Lanka to be a satellite as a result